Hey neighbor, welcome back to Year-End Countdown Season on ARTV. My name is John, I love music, and if this year hadn't been such a fantastic one for the art form, I'd probably be wrapped up in a cocoon of depression somewhere in my attic. Thankfully, 2020 registered as one of the best years for music in recent memory. Most of these albums were written and recorded pre-global pandemic, but their sense of importance increased, either due to the relatable lyrics that could be felt in our current world, or just because we needed to escape reality, and I really don't think there's anything wrong with that at all. I cut back pretty drastically on the amount of albums I listened to this year, which might sound strange, but when you've been reviewing music for over a decade, you just have to realize that you can't keep discovering music at such an insane rate. That might not make sense to some of you because everyone's listening habits are different, but I promise it's okay to not hear everything, you can't hear everything, and you shouldn't be expected to lose your mind just trying to keep up. If you're new to the channel, thanks for stopping in. Feel free to subscribe for the love of music and ring that bell so you get notified when I post other year-end countdowns, and if you could take a split second to smash that like button, it goes a long way to help support my content. Never judge a book by its cover. That's a lesson I learned for probably the millionth time in my life, but it does apply here to this Australian metalcore band Polaris that my viewers introduced me to and I subsequently fell in love with after me not really connecting with them on my first try. Metalcore pushed me away as I got older and grew sick of the repetitive themes and predictable chugga 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 breakdowns. It was never exactly my favorite genre out there, but I'm happy Polaris came along to remind me that not everything in the scene sucks. Like, oh yeah, here's this cool band that's actually making use of multiple vocalists, and they're killing it while bringing the heaviness and tossing in more ambient moments of post-rock. They made a tightly wound record that clocks in at 41 minutes, never straying too far from the path despite their ability to let momentum build, simmer, and give explosive payoff. Intelligent song structures pop up immediately, considering the opener Pray for Rain? Yeah, that's one of the most blistering cuts on The Death of Me. Later we get into Masochist, a track that splits your teeth in half with a whiplash riff storm and some fiery vocals that showcase the best of their heavy and clean expertise. It can't go unmentioned how important every single member of this band are to Polaris. They really tear shit up at every corner, with Masochist being a leading cause for praise, along with the soaring Vagabond, which is my favorite on the LP, the cathartic Martyr, and holy shit, that moment of closure on the final track, The Descent. They're all pretty great, but that is how you seal a door shut. Hailing from New Zealand and not letting success bite their heads off even for a split second, the BETHS released the fantastic Jump Rope Gazers over the summer, and I'm so excited this ended up making the cut for my year-end albums list because they're massively underrated in the rest of the world, and if you're into indie, rock, alternative, alt-pop, any of the above, you're in for a sweet treat. That makes it sound like I'm trying to sell you on Pop-Tarts, but no, it's an album from a real band, people making music, you know the drill. It's the BETHS, and they're really gifted when it comes to lining up incredible vocal moments and making use of every member, not only for their instrument of choice, but for their pipes, as most of the songs have everyone tapping in and giving a mini choral effect to their rock sound. Acrid is a must-hear if you're looking to get into the BETHS, as it encapsulates vocal harmonies, insightful lyrics, and a rush of guitars that make for a joyous listen. Man, that is just a rush of serotonin. Really, from the hooky guitar gem Mars the God of Water back to the opener I'm Not Getting Excited, you're in for a great surprise that might not hit you right away, but once you've heard it, you'll be back for more in no time.
I'm in a garden, tethered to my own, so what do I care? And what do you care about?
Were any of of us really expecting a Hayley Williams solo album? Probably not, since to be honest, she always seemed to go to bat for Paramore being her main creative outlet. But that made Petals for Armor an even bigger and better surprise. Her intentions are obvious. This project exists solely because she had the passion to create music outside of Paramore. While I was hesitant to the phased rollout of the album, you really can't argue with the end results. This is great. This is a gorgeous record with very intricate stylings from Hayley and her friends that she rounded up. They collaborate on the writing, the music, and the production. I would say the introspection unlocks the understanding of the songs that live here. I think it's high-key required to do a bit of self-reflection after hearing it, and that's not a bad thing. I just think she made some remarkable observations on life, and the lens capturing those thoughts is the icing on top of the cake. Breaking the album up into 3 sections makes sense considering the journey we're taking, starting with the harrowing expression of Rage Simmer, and concluding with the beautiful Crystal Clear, which features vocals from her grandfather. The time in between is like a drive through the mountains that starts at night, but slowly creeps its way towards the dawn and the light at the end of a long season of suffering. Pure Love is undeniably effervescent and self-aware, glowing with Hayley's gorgeous vocals and a spirited instrumental that pairs up the bass with some sweeping strings and hypnotizing backing vocals. Sudden Desire breaks the mold to get intimate and does so with a balance of reservation and splendid sexuality. My Friend sobers us up to the grim realities of life while still admiring loyalty, and among the mix of others that I could praise, from Leave It Alone to Dead Horse, I have yet to single out Over Yet for sounding so damn refreshing. It's like a spiritual recharge each time I pass through. Petals for Armor slays, and I'm so happy Hayley Williams has such a respectable solo effort to her name. 15 songs in 55 minutes sounded a bit overly ambitious when the track list was revealed, but hearing is believing, and the proof is right here in this soundtrack to Healing Wounds.
Your eyes, I see there's something burning inside you.
After Hours represents everything Abel worked on over the past decade, but it's not some sort of greatest hits victory lap just meant to pander to his fans and get a few hits on the radio. This is the work of a seasoned pro that knows he can pull off the genre hybrid model better than most, so this time around he dipped his palette into synthpop, R&B, electronica, and occasional hip-hop cadences to shape LP4 into his smoothest album yet. Abel stuffed After Hours to the brim with blissful hits that everyone can enjoy and deep cuts that actually have a real edge, which I sincerely appreciate. To see this kind of passionate soul-searching spread across 14 tracks with an overarching theme, that just proves that The Weeknd doesn't just drop albums for the hell of it. I mean, Starboy came out in 2016, and After Hours, that didn't land until 2020. Here lies one of the most sonically pleasing mainstream records in recent memory. The sparkling production drips with buzzing synths, skittering drums, and sharp traces of guitar that cut up the mix like the calm before a storm. Abel's engulfed in his element, and the tracks transition in and out like a perfectly timed revolving door that keeps the music fresh but connected. A lot of fans were quick to note this album's similarities to Currents, the last album released under the TAME IMPALA moniker almost 5 years prior to the Slow Rush. If you see that as a positive like me, then we're on the same page. But to those that cut him down at the knees for making a stellar album that sounds like TAME IMPALA without missing a beat, what exactly is the problem again? Crown jewels start appearing immediately, and I'm shocked this didn't floor me at first, but the opener One More Year speaks volumes about the theme of time over a hypnotizing synth loop that only continues to drive the point home harder as the track evolves. Things eventually got to the point where the song swallowed me whole, something that could also be said for the light funk mood of Is It True, or the pounding It Might Be Time that just never stops in its quest to hold your ears captive. Posthumous Forgiveness rattles the mind in a jar as Kevin relates the struggle of not only losing his father, but simultaneously missing him dearly despite his best attempts to only see the bad or unsupportive moments and some sort of looping montage of their strained relationship. It's a haunting tune with an epic instrumental swell that kind of reroutes a few times over the course of the song without ever flipping the car completely. Tomorrow's Dust was a major cornerstone of the album that chipped away at me significantly. I went from finding it slightly too dreamy to craving that gentle acoustic guitar mold and the touches of the calming keys that keep it floating in the clouds at all times, so justice for the underrated gems like this, along with the widely loved hits like Lost in Yesterday. The Slow Rush did exactly what Kevin promised us with the title. There's moments of instant euphoria, and there's precious materials that take a bit longer to properly harvest, but when that light bulb finally goes off in your head, nothing else matters as you stand at the gates of time, battling the invisible enemy known as our own mortality.
Step into the light, so bright sometimes. I'm not ever going back.
December album releases can often come and go in a flurry with the holidays, but Harry Styles? He's not your typical artist. Instead of being swept under the rug, Fine Line became a defining record for 2020 with a slew of hit singles, including his first ever #1 in the US, Watermelon Sugar. The hits are prominent but don't feel forced. In fact, I think it says a lot that the lead single Lights Up was only the tip of the iceberg in terms of success. Harry made it very clear that he wants to be an album artist, which I respect deeply since I'm such a fan of the art form. Oh really? The man who reviews albums on YouTube for a decade likes an artist who makes albums? You don't say, Mr. Album Review Television! Thank you for the reminder, Connor the Contrarian. I was just trying to show my support. Damn! To be clear, the point I'm driving home is that Harry Styles doesn't just have finesse when it comes to what you hear in a playlist or on the radio. I adore those tunes, but even better is what lies beneath, with the lovely Sunflower Volume 6 making me smile without fail, or Cherry that dips into the fountain of post-breakup melancholy, and of course, the star pupil Golden beaming light straight from heaven directly into our ears. What a legend! As much as I've insisted that I'm not a metalhead over the years, crushing heavy metal goodness you just can't deny always finds its way to me in waves. Trivium hit the refresh button on the browser as they tapped into the piercing sounds of Absolution, drowning us in resilient, angry guitar energy and a surreal amount of standout drum patterns that have me chomping at the bit to show Alex Bent some love. The initial singles sold me on checking this out day one, with the title track What the Dead Men Say being one of my favorite songs of the year regardless of genre. Matt Heafy's vocal control should lay to rest any worries of him going softer with age. You feel the wrath of something like Amongst the Shadows and the Stones, and you know what you're up against. An unstoppable snarl on the verge of kicking your fucking face in. Bangers on headbangers stack up nicely throughout, with some of my personal favorites being the emotional Scattering the Ashes, the crushing 2000s hard rocker Catastrophist, and the unreal swan song The Ones We Leave Behind that boasts some of the most insane drumming on the record. Trivium leaves you with the taste of blood in the water, so make like a shark and get to swarming. God, this one hurts my heart, guys. Mac Miller passed away a few years ago, one of many young, bright artists that have fallen in recent memory. Mac was absolutely blooming as an artist before his death, and Circles is his posthumous magnum opus that makes you feel like he came back to Earth one last time to leave these words with his fans. Mac gently stirs together soulful doses of R&B-leaning hip-hop and soft rock over the course of 12 effective tracks. His longtime friend and producer John Breon tastefully assembled the remaining puzzle pieces to stay as close to Mac's vision for Circles as possible, and he did a damn good job at making this feel authentic. Production is actually one of the key attributes that makes this one hit even harder than its companion album Swimming for me. You can practically bounce along with the Disclosure-assisted Blue World that features Mac's catchiest hook ever, but to offset that, you could go as minimal as the tearjerker Good News that not only got to the internet's busiest music nerd, but also to me and millions other worldwide, I'm sure. Those are both staples of Mac's final album, but I'd also highly recommend the hazy synth stream I Can See, which is close to being my favorite overall, along with the buttery smooth Woods that sees him in more of a typical rap cadence, or the choppy retro swing of Hands, and the bass guitar-fueled title track Circles that guides us into the atmosphere.
You want me to do it the same exact way as you, but I don't want anything less than you.
Conventional has never been a word in the Strokes' vocabulary, so when an unconventional first single, At the Door, landed like an unlabeled UPS package to the world, I knew things were about to get really interesting. After leaving the band on and off the back burner for well over a decade, Julian Casablancas finally returned the Strokes to primary status, and it really fucking shows because the new abnormal, it's everything you could want as an aging Strokes fan and then some. After a vicious divorce and reforming the brotherhood within the group, they rounded up producer Rick Rubin, known for his legendary thick boy soundwave style, and went all in on making the new abnormal round all the bases. We're immediately greeted with the classic Strokesism the adults are talking to get the blood pumping, but instead of clogging up arteries, they're able to sleekly maneuver through their most decidedly synth-pop effort yet, Brooklyn bridge to chorus, and the falsetto-laden climate crisis Eternal Summer that sees the rhythm section linking up nicely throughout the phases of the song. All of the band members deserve loads of praise, not just Julian, even though his contributions are the easiest to immediately single out. Albert and Nick, for example, are able to retain a lot of those familiar chord progressions the Strokes love to recycle, all while venturing out to new pastures too. As they fill you up like a 6-course meal, prepare to metaphorically pop the belt off faster than Rudy Giuliani to make enough room for that grandiose emotional swell owed to the Mets. Julian's voice cuts through the fog like the bright beam of a lighthouse, tastefully reusing the chords of the opening song The Adults Are Talking, and successfully tying the new abnormal up in a beautifully mangled knot that happens to look a lot like life as we know it.
I never tried to hurt, I only tried to play a memory of thought for everything you say.
Crashing through the canopy like a ravenous, well, I can't say dog, that would be too obvious. How about wolf? Yeah, crashing through like a ravenous wolf, it's the Michigan emo punk band DOGLEG with their debut album Melee. An anxiety-ridden headspace swells into beautiful torment on this jet-setting 35-minute thrill ride. Gnarly guitars gush with urgency and rarely get tucked away, but color me equally impressed with how throttling the drums are on every single track of the album. The guy is just back there doing the damn thing 110% of the time, and the effort makes Melee teeter closer to this bridge of turmoil that you feel in the pit of your stomach as they pair up with their vocalist who haunts with his manic presence. Standout track Wrist highlights what makes DOGLEG stand out most to me. Cutting guitars chop away like a chainsaw, with buzzing bass and post-hardcore like vocals driving the crusade forward. Kawasaki Backflip wrecks with a nearly identical energy, lashing out with gargantuan drum moments and lightning rod guitars to set it all on fire for an immersive emo cleansing. Long story short, I felt like I was back in the early 2010s, when I wasn't thinking about anything other than the music and how it struck me and sank in further over time. DOGLEG's Melee is a fantastic listen, so don't be a dummy, give it a listen and see what all the buzz is about.
Picture me red as I sit on the bed with my hands on my head and this pistol too. Why the fuck must I be miserable? The devils they do the despicable, and still they move like they invincible. These filthy criminals sit at the pinnacle, doing the typical, keeping them visible, taking the most and providing the minimal.
For the better part of a decade, the rap veterans Killer Mike and LP have been the ultimate tag team of destruction in hip-hop, bodying anything in their path, with the highly anticipated RTJ4 being no exception. Run the Jewels not only celebrated their greatest mainstream recognition yet, they did it while blending their unique sense of humor in the punchlines while adding in sobering bars about institutional racism and systemic oppression delivered by the cruel hands of police brutality. Don't get me wrong, this album slaps up, down, left, right, any way you want to look at it, and LP adds some of the most inflammatory, crowd-roaring production that I've heard in rap all year long, but the tone is a lot more serious on RTJ4, and by the end of this succinct 39-minute war zone, you understand why they're laying it all on the line, the good, the bad, and the ugly in the name of justice. One thing I've always really respected about RTJ is that they never overstay their welcome. They pounce like a dynamic duo, in and out in a flash, but always leaving you with these big explosive memories along the way to help you connect the dots. Round 4 features more of those dynamite collaborations, including the 2 Chainz crossover Out of Sight that has one of the most hypnotizing beats laid down in 2020. Everyone has a great verse, the flows are fire, and that uptempo swell starting there at track 3 ushers in that jaw-dropping middle section that keeps heating up all the way through track 7, that's Just with Pharrell and Zach De La Rocha, once again from Rage Against the Machine. The introspection cuts even deeper as the legend herself Mavis Staples appears alongside RTJ and Josh Homme of Queens of the Stone Age to sculpt the chilling Pulling the Pin and the grand finale A Few Words for the Firing Squad that really puts this on ice. Yankee and the Brave radiate necessity in these dark times, glimmering with sparks of hope from the golden days, but never failing to acknowledge the plight of minorities and the personal struggles of the core duo.
Wondering why
As time goes on and our favorite bands get older, sometimes you can't help but pull the car metaphor out of your pocket to explain why maybe you love them less over time. The tread on the tire is wearing thin, they changed lanes too fast and lost what made them special, all that jazz. And while Last Young Renegade had me ready to pull the plug in 2017, All Time Low absolutely made my year by coming back stronger than ever on their 8th album, Wake Up Sunshine. The pacing is fantastic, the energy fills the room instantly and never goes away. The boys know the protocol for flaming hooks and deliver them in spades all throughout the record. The title track, Wake Up Sunshine, beams with traces of the sarcasm they've always worn well. Trouble Is sees them taking on direct influence from Blink-182 with their own twist, and January Gloom lands some of those warm, fuzzy feelings with incredible backing vocals. Jack bangs out one of his most memorable riffs ever on the stunning hit Clumsy that's been in steady rotation since April. Melancholy Kaleidoscope lights up the airwaves as one of the best and catchiest things they've ever created, and Monsters featuring Black Bear is surprisingly awesome, so there's a lot of fun moods to go around. There's too many to call out by name, but give the album a spin if you haven't already. If you're into pop punk or even pop rock at all, then this could totally be right up your alley. RINA Sawayama's ability to fuse genres effortlessly has me swooning for her debut album so hard. She's a brilliant vocal talent who also happens to possess the incredibly important element of great songwriting to back up that fierce persona. I can't tell you how many times I've come back to Sawayama in 2020. There's a song for every mood and a song for every type of fan, and that includes you! As she slays the likes of 2000s pop reminiscent of Britney Spears and nu metal with a twist of goth rock a la Amy Lee, RINA really went there and achieved a myriad of spellbinding songs along the way. It's not like she just sits around in the past either, though. The production on Excess should be more than enough to prove how well she walks this balance beam. But she also advances with more modern sounds and a disco twist on the excellent power dynamic commentary like The Boys, as well as the clapping Love Me For Me. Those two aren't even top tier cuts despite their greatness, oh no. I've not even uttered the names Bad Friend, a truly heartwarming expression of guilt about a friendship that features some beautiful vocoded vocals, or Paradisin with its chiptune electronic swagger and dynamic key change at the end after an epic solo, or better yet, Who's Gonna Save You Now? This song is massive. It's the ultimate hype song that has me feeling like RINA's truly a godsend.
And if I'm dead to you, why are you at the wake? Cursing my name, wishing I stayed. Look at how my tears ricochet.
When I spoke about what I'd love to see in a Taylor Swift album in the post-Reputation era, one thing I always made clear is that I just wanted to hear Taylor release something that felt genuine to her. Folklore is absolutely that, but also way more than that in every single way imaginable. This is already my favorite Taylor album, and it's not even a year old. Does that say more about me or more about the quality of the album? Who cares? Taylor lit up my eardrums with this magical forest adventure. She tied together her own personal experiences without making them feel exclusive to her, which is another triumphant display of her poetic songwriting, but she also takes on the spirit of other women in history. She tells their stories and also occasionally crosses paths with her own existence. Taylor does incorporate elements of country into folklore, but more than anything else, this is an indie rock sound with touches of folk, chamber pop, and dream pop. My mind is still blown over just how much of a perfect 180 she pulled. Not to totally dismiss Lover, but this is head and shoulders above the two records she released before this. Folklore is a very special chapter in Taylor's long, successful career, and given that Evermore delivered even more in this vein, I hope it's safe to say Miss Swift is fully realizing her artistic impact beyond the realm of the top 40.
I'm a bad liar with a savior complex. All the skeletons you hide.
Hesitant was probably the word I'd use to describe my feelings before checking out Punisher. I was coming off of her feature on the 1975's abysmal album, and I wasn't exactly clamoring for more, but after seeing so many viewer requests to talk about Phoebe Bridgers, I caved, and hallelujah I did, given that I now recognize this woman as one of the most talented artists working in music current day. Unrelenting waves of sorrow lightly trickle in like a blood flood of emotion, and yes, this is totally an emo record. emo folk, emo rock, emo bridgers, whatever the hell you want to tag along with it. It's very much in that vein, but that's not to say that there's not the occasional burst of light. Phoebe's songwriting is bold but intimate, revealing but not claustrophobic to the point where you need to breathe rapidly into a paper bag after experiencing the album. Don't ignore the importance of the introductory track, because DVD Menu gazes into the unknown with a breathtaking, lush instrumental that fades elegantly into the key moment, Garden Song. If you're wondering where to begin, maybe a song or two to prove why she's worth your time, well then let me point you in the right direction with bright flashing arrows, since you really can't miss the talent. Savior complex, weld simplicity, chill-inducing vocal poise, and unmistakable grit in the lyrics that casually tosses doses of eye rolls to this white-knighting individual that's actually being portrayed in the song. I Know the End is the other absolute must here, and if you've heard it, you know exactly why. Starting off slow, lighting a fuse, watching it race closer and closer to the explosion, that's the structure of this song, and it works brilliantly. Not every moment carries a lavish transformation, nor do they need to. I'll gladly shed tears for Graceland 2 with those lovely harmonies, or rip my heart out and put it on my sleeve when Halloween hits the speakers. Know this, Punisher is immaculate when it comes to concepts and pacing, with Phoebe knowing exactly where to place these key moments of catharsis after some brutal passages. Garden Song is one to start, Chinese Satellite wants so badly to believe in the middle, and then I Know the End erupts into madness while the credit sequence for an unreal album rolls. Moving into the top 5, we have the legendary alternative metal band Deftones with their 9th album, OHMS. They blew the doors off again. My god, this is an album worth drooling over. How the hell do they keep doing it? OHMS is one of the best albums they've ever made, and they masterfully cull everything they've ever done all into one unstoppable behemoth. Deftones have always played with the quiet, loud dynamic, but this time it's much more to the loud, aggressive side, considering this is the heaviest album they've dropped in a decade. 9-string guitars blast my fucking skull in, but what a tease, man. No concerts right now? All of these songs would go off in a live setting. Imagine flames shooting straight from the riffage as Abe throttles the drums and Chino belts out his tightrope act of beautiful then screamed vocals. I have to see this go down live. There's nothing even close to resembling a bad song on here, from the eargasming guitar dweller The Spell of Mathematics to the frustrated Genesis that opens the record in hella suspenseful fashion, all the way down through that otherworldly second half slide into Deftones' Paradise that features amazing tracks like Radiant City and This Link Is Dead. This is the exact kind of release I needed in 2020. Deftones rule the Roman Colosseum on a career-defining record, OHMS, that's kept me on the line, turning over new stones, finding something new, noteworthy, or tangible that I hadn't heard on previous listens. The addiction is real, but I'm gonna need y'all to let me just have this one, okay? A healthy addiction happens sometimes.
Aren't you the guy who tried to hurt me with the word goodbye?
Dance my ass off? Well, I do believe I will. In fact, I think that's what I've been doing pretty much all quarantine long at home, because Miss Dua Lipa, she dropped one of the most fun, electrifying pop records I've heard in ages on Future Nostalgia. Originally, Dua admitted she was struggling on where to take the sound of album 2, but when Levitating put her brainwaves in motion, she knew exactly what she wanted the music to be. She wanted to follow more of this retro pop aesthetic that now lines the halls of her shimmering sophomore set. Make no mistake, Dua Lipa struck pop gold with 10 outstanding gems, and one song at the very end that we're just gonna pretend doesn't really exist since I take it out of the queue every time I play through the album. Pop music with polished instrumentation played on real instruments always takes me up to the clouds, but Dua's consistency is a huge part of what made Future Nostalgia a cornerstone of the year. Levitating is the perfect pop song, and whoever crafted that spring-loaded beat is a goddamn genius. Break My Heart landed like a successful unintentional sequel to her old hit New Rules, and I loved the 80s synth-pop explosion physical that raised my spirits time and time again every time it zoomed by on shuffle. There's so many diamonds to latch on to. Pretty Please is hella underrated with that bubbling bass and a wide-eyed Dua Lipa, plus you've got Hallucinate to satisfy all of your disco cravings, and the sample-heavy Love Again that just knocks it into outer space. Future Nostalgia is a fucking blast and is the single most fun, danceable record of 2020. Let's get the world back to normal again so I can properly embarrass myself while dancing my ass off to these in public.
She's breathing in the blowback. Born in the poor white trash and always typecast.
Getting a serotonin shot from the Killers is always a win, and their latest effort, Imploding the Mirage, is their strongest and most resilient work in over a decade. Wide open soundscapes are theirs for the conquering, and they ride right into that fucking sunset and carpe diem on all 10 tracks. Ecstatic doesn't even begin to describe how I felt after Caution came roaring out of the gate as the lead single. I was elated to hear that kind of glorious passion bellowing out of Brandon Flowers. With Lindsey Buckingham of Fleetwood Mac fame shredding a righteous guitar solo at the end, and seeing that kind of amazing guest power fueling other diamond-worthy moments like My God with Wise Blood, oh buddy, tip the cowboy hat back and let's implode this mirage together. My Own Soul's Warning jumpstarts album 6 by putting a feel-good sense of heart in your spirit with a galloping synth and funneling bass line that races across the open land like a wild Mustang soaring through the mountains of Montana. That song never fails to make me feel alive, and that's a fantastic recurring theme for the Killers, with the honest anthem When the Dreams Run Dry standing tall amongst the uncertainty, and the trembling blowback serving as an ode to Brandon's wife, who you can tell absolutely means the world to him. That special confession of romance is topped only by the love story Lightning Fields, my favorite song on the record, and one of the most gargantuan efforts in their canon. Whether the Killers are successfully tackling Talking Heads influences on Fire and Bone, or if they're refusing to give up on love with the towering My God, it's just stunning. Imploding the Mirage is stunning. This is up there with like Sam's Town and Hot Fuss, their gold standard albums. I don't know how it happened, but let's not only thank the Killers for making it happen, but also their new lifeblood and the producers Sean Everett and Jonathan Ratto.
Fetch the bolt cutters. I've been in here too long. Fetch the bolt cutters. Whatever happens. Fetch the bolt cutters.
Do you ever feel like tormented but soothed by an album at the same time? Tormented in a good way, I guess, like you feel someone else's history in your own way and give an emotional response on their behalf because of your own journey, but you also feel at peace knowing that they've found their peace? I think that's maybe one of the top reasons why Fiona Apple continues to be a gold standard in the music industry. I love her so much, and Fetch the Bolt Cutters, it's another perfect album. Fiona writes and records unlike any artist I've ever seen. There's no deadlines, clearly, but when she puts out music, she fucking means it. Following up Idler Wheel is an even more percussive outing that experiments to the nth degree with homemade instrumentation and raw sounds to help drive her poignant messages home. Her backing bands sound rejuvenated as they fall in line with Fiona's odd manner of delivery, pushing out hand claps, harps, Tupperware drums, pianos, and chants, all to give Bolt Cutters such a clever raw sound that I genuinely don't think most artists could pull off at all. Maybe the first few masterpieces on the album will have you thinking it's just more of Fiona in her natural element, and I can see that. I Want You to Love Me has been around for a hot minute, and it features that piano vocal pairing she always nails, but once we hit that chef's kiss segue from track 1 into Shamika, oh, the flaming pianos are off to the races to aid in one of the best songs in her discography. Her artistic evolution from Title to Bolt Cutters is just stunning. Fiona's been through hell so many times in her life, yet here she is blossoming into unparalleled confidence as she speaks her own truth and also explores relationships with other women in her past that have been through turmoil, and she also stands up for other women fearlessly on the shocking For Her, the spunky Under the Table, and the heartbreaking Newspaper that tells the story of a man that once claimed to love her, now dating another woman, leaving Fiona to suffer in silence with this woman she doesn't even know. I haven't done this up to this point, but I'd highly suggest watching my full review of the album if you're curious to go deeper into the subject matter. This is a lyrically and musically dense, yet somehow sparse record that truly makes it a modern classic that will have you transcending by the time it's all over. It's almost here, but before I reveal my pick for the album of the year 2020, I have lucky number 13 honorable mentions that we're gonna quickly roll through in slideshow fashion, and I do have to give a special shout out to one of those that will appear. It's an EP. Unfortunately, it's an EP. I don't know why they didn't release it as an album. It should have been an album, but apparently it's an EP, meaning it's not eligible for my list. But just know, Post-Human Survival Horror by Bring Me the Horizon is fucking amazing. I love every song on there to death, and it would have been up extremely high. Not at number 1, but extremely high had it actually been eligible for this list. All of those albums you just saw, I definitely have love for, and there's others that I really did like this year. I can't put everything in the honorable mentions. I have to cut it off somewhere. But with that being said, let's move on to number 1.
'Cause we're just so fucking tired of explaining ourselves. We throw a pail down our throats, or ourselves into the ocean. 'Cause half our friends are dead, the other half are depressed.
No skips, no cheap thrills, just gut-wrenching grief that rips your guts with a sawtooth blade and slowly helps you gather the pieces of your life in shambles to stitch you back together by the end of the 40-minute run. Brave Faces Everyone may have dropped in February 2020, but it's one of my all-time favorite albums already, and my obvious choice for the Album of the Year crown. I haven't had a single cry-free listen through it ever. This album crushed me, broke me up into a ball, broke my heart in a beautifully tattered manner, and if you haven't put it together already, this is 110% an emo record with ferocious punk and rock instrumentation in the vein of the Wonder Years, except with 10 times the agony. That's saying something because I adore the way that the Wonder Years craft a song, but they've never quite landed a devastating blow like this. Impossible might be the one word I'd attach to Brave Faces if I had to boil it down that far. This was an impossible year. It's impossible not to have a vitriol, emotional response to the record. It's just impossible not to love it for the brutal honesty. Just impossible. Please, don't listen to this album if you don't feel like your mental health can tolerate it, because I'm not lying. This is the real deal. Gritty depictions of life on the verge of collapse. Their vocalist Dylan Slocum is not only incredible with his persistence despite his depression, he sounds like he's one step away from hitting his breaking point and bursting into tears at all times, which I don't even know how one emotes that well through singing, but he does it on every track. Routine Pain opens the record and had me burying my face in my hands sobbing within the first minute. I couldn't tell you when the last time I had such a pure, genuine reaction to music, but I know it when I hear it. The painfully honest explorations of feeling worthless, jaded, chewed up, and spit out decorate the haunted halls of this museum like the art of fallen friends that came before us. I could make an hour-long video talking about every all-too-relatable painful lyric. He just paints it in such a way that you can't help but curl up in a ball, waiting for things to end or else take a turn for the better. I want to make it clear that this album isn't some whiny emo band singing about girls or other cliches of the genre you might expect. They're ripping open new and old wounds about the financial collapse of 2008, losing everything, fallen friends that have died by suicide, anxiety, addiction, depression, curb stomping our ability to function properly, and just being handed adulthood without a real way of coping or even knowing where to go. So we just kind of blindly feel it out in the dark in this hallway filled with daggers and danger. My heart breaks every time I hear this album, and because of that, it's not one that I can have in constant rotation or listen to all that often. One, I want to savor how special it is to me so I don't just play it into the ground, but two, I genuinely just can't push myself to get through it sometimes. It hits that hard. Maybe that's just because of how heavily I relate to the lyrics. My family lost almost everything back in the 2008 collapse. I've been abandoned in my adult years by people I thought would always be there for me. I battled depression, anxiety, feeling worthless, and this year wasn't even going that well before the pandemic, but now the songs practically cut me in half. I battled financial uncertainty, as did everyone out there. I gained weight because I sat at home doing nothing and hated myself for no reason because of that. I lost my dear friend Elise to suicide and found out that news this past May. Seriously, fuck 2020, but thank you Spanish Love Songs for being a friend to feel it out with, because much like the album, the year started off with so much pain, so much grief and loss. But the final song reminds us that we were never broken, life's just very long. Brave faces, everyone. What a hellfire year it was. Seriously, I love you guys. Thank you so much for supporting me and being a part of the positive things that did happen in 2020. If you enjoyed my top 20 albums list, then please like this video, subscribe for the love of music, and let me know your favorite albums of the year in the comments below. Thank you again so much for watching. Tap here to see last year's list, or over here if you want to see all of my year-end countdowns in one playlist. Happy holidays, everyone. I hope you have a fantastic 2021 as we transition, and I'll be back soon on ARTV.